Good morning, dear teacher. My name is Isabel. In this opportunity, I'm going to give you some tips to teach direct, indirect, and oblique objects. Studying the relationships that are maintained between complementary verbs and noun phrase according to the syntactic position of the noun phrase within each clause, it is vital to remember the role of a subject and an object in the clause. Subject. It is always a noun formed by a proper noun that executes the verb, such as Marie, she, books. Object. The object is the person or thing affected by the action described in the verb. For example, I read a book. Book is the object created by the action of reading. And there are two types of objects: direct, indirect, and oblique. Direct object. It is a noun or pronoun that is affected directly by the action of the verb. The direct object follows the verb in the active clause. However, clauses function as a direct object. Here there are two tips to teach. There are two tips to teach. Two suggestions for teaching students to recognize the direct object in an English class that could be very helpful. First, one tip for recognizing the direct object in a clause is by finding the transitive verb and teaching students that direct object answer the question what or whom after a transitive verb. For example, the girls collect flowers. The direct object appears after the transitive verb collect, so flowers are the direct object because they answer the question what do the girls collect. Another tip to teach a direct object is that they follow the pattern in a declarative sentence, but this function can also be realized by a clause. For example, they exchange gifts. This is a declarative sentence, and the direct object is the word gifts. So that sentence follows the pattern subject, verb, and direct object. In the same way, they want to receive gifts. This is a to infinitive clause, and the direct object is the clause to receive gifts, so that clause follows the pattern subject, main verb, and direct object within a to infinitive clause. Indirect object. This is the recipient of the direct object, so the direct object says who or for who the action of the verb is performed. Indirect object cannot exist in sentence that does not have a direct object. There are two tips to teach indirect object. An indirect object is always a noun or pronoun which is not part of the prepositional phrase and they answer the question for whom or for what the action of the verb is done. For example, I gave Nicholas a gift. Nicholas is the noun phrase functioning as the indirect object. Another example, I bought her flowers. The indirect object is her, so it answered the question, who did I buy flowers for? Another tip is that indirect objects only appear with ditransitive verbs, so that ditransitive verbs require both indirect and direct object, and they follow this pattern: subject, verb, indirect object, more direct object. Saray, vaya para allá. For example, I gave Luciana a pair of shoes. The indirect object is the name Luciana, and the direct object shoes. Oblique object. That type of object was recently implemented by syntax, and an oblique object is any noun phrase preceded by a preposition. And there are two tips to teach oblique objects. One tip for teaching oblique objects are to explain the most important characteristic for identify them. So an indirect object occurs in a prepositional phrase such as for, to, in, etc. For example, I opened the chest with a key. The chest is the direct object. The chest is the direct object, and the preposition with indicates as the oblique object. Another tip for teaching oblique object is to make students recognize that oblique object cannot get an alternate position because they do it, the clause changes its sense. For example, I watched a movie about a child prodigy. In that sentence, the oblique object is about the child prodigy. However, I watched the child prodigy a movie. Changing the oblique object position the sentence acquires another sense. For that reason, the child prodigy is an oblique object. To conclude, direct, indirect, and oblique objects are important components of noun phrase in sentence that help us to clarify our message. Therefore, these tips are intended to teach students to recognize them in an easy way. Thank you so much.